Alrighty, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode number 1 on season number 5 of GameSense. We're so happy to be here. We're happy to have all of our hosts and guests here. We're happy that you're watching. My name is Francis O'Rourke. I'm the host of GameSense. And joining me tonight are a few people. I'll introduce them here. First off, we've got Ty Trimbley. He's from team number 319. We've got Clinton Bollinger. He's from team 2337. We got Evan Morrison. He's from team 5803. And we're all part of the RoboSports Network. And joining us today is our guest. His name is JB. Jonathan Bryant's his real name, but he goes by JB. JB, you're from Team 238. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Sweet. Awesome. We're really happy to have you on. We tried to get you on last year, but apparently you had to FTA an event or something important like that. So, it's whatever. You can see behind me, I'm here live at the WPI district. We're still in the middle of setup right now. Clinton, you were at the Kettering number 1 district earlier today, right? How's things going there? Sweet, that's awesome. All right, so before we get started with the full show, I just want to say a few things. First off, we want to thank our sponsor, Symbotic. They do a lot of awesome stuff for us. They have a really cool system. Hold on. All right, here we go. All right, you may not have been able to hear JB there. So JB, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself one more time for everybody?
Oh, okay. So, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So, my name is Jonathan Bryant. I've been involved with First since 2007, and after college, I got a job at First where I was the kit parts engineer for a few years. And while I was there, I started to mentor Team 238 in 2016, and I've been with the team ever since.
All right, awesome. Cool. So sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical glitch there with the audio. I don't normally direct the show, so you have to apologize if I apologize for a couple of glitches we had there. So hopefully this is a little bit better. All right. So I'll get started anyway, though. First off, I want to thank our sponsor, Symbotic, again, because they're a great sponsor for us. They help us do all the things we do. Learn more about them at symbotic.com. Also, I wanted to say a couple words. So JB, like you said, is a former employee of First. He's no longer, and he's here as a friend of ours and a mentor of Team 238. So please don't ask him any Q&A questions because he can't answer officially. In fact, I believe he'll only answer sarcastically. So be careful. Last thing I'll say before we get rolling is we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we hope that you guys don't either. If you don't like what we have to say, go out there and prove us wrong on the field this weekend. All right, so let's get rocking and rolling. Oh, excuse me, one last thing. We're going to be taking questions from everybody in the chat. So if you have something you want to ask us, or you want to hear our opinions on something, or you want to say something and talk about, in the Twitch chat, type !Q, then your question, and our chat bot will pick it up and we'll bring it in and we'll answer questions live on the air. All right, let's get it started then. So our first topic of the day today is going to be what we learned from week 0 this year. So there was an official week 0 event in Bedford, New Hampshire, and a whole bunch of other week 0 events all across the United States and the world. So I want to hear what you all learned from this. So JB, why don't you start off and give us what you guys learned?
Yeah, so we learned a few things. I think the most critical one that we probably learned is that there's so much going on in this game that you really have to track everything and you have to be very aware of what's going on around you because you could not be paying attention for 2 seconds and instantaneously you're going to lose your switch and you're probably going to lose the scale too if you're not on top of everything completely. And then the other thing we learned is I think we had drastically overestimated how long it was going to take to put cubes into the vault, but it was a lot faster on the field. Like once you got some time into it, it was very quick to put a lot of cubes back there.
So Ty, you also went to a week 0 of this year with your team. What did you guys learn?
We learned basically the thing that sums it up for me is cubes are worth less as the game goes on. And that really helped our team basically figure it out because we're so used to like that last second that last second gear or that last second boulder that we're throwing into the tower. But here, if you put a last second cube onto a scale or a switch, it's worth like 0 or 1 points.
Exactly.
So really figuring out where to maximize your score with every single cube that you pick up is going to be, I think, one of the biggest goals for a coach during this game.
Actually, I kind of wanted to say that I think that, I was a coach at one point, and it pains me that I won't be a coach this year, because I think this is going to be one of the best games for coaches we've had in a very long time. Because the field is centralized, but the decisions you have to make are so critical that I think that the coach on any given team is going to be almost as important as having a good driver and having a good operator, human player, is having a coach that knows when to tell you where to go, to the switch to the scale, to play defense, or to go back to the vault at the right time.
Yeah, this is definitely a game where behind the glass, the coach really is going to have to focus on more than just their own robot and take a more bigger picture view of the field. Um, because not only what decisions you make, but at what point you make them is so critical to the rest of the match flow. And understanding that, like Ty said, cubes get less valuable as the game progresses because they can have sort of it's a diminishing influence on the final score, so to speak. Um, and so putting a cube in one place versus another place early in the match can have such huge implications downstream, that those decisions are really going to be linchpins for the entire match. And knowing maybe when to give up on a particular objective and change course in order to save a match.
Clinton, did you guys go play this weekend or this past weekend at week 0 as well?
Yeah, yeah, we went to Kettering University had a week 0 event where it was basically set up so that volunteers in Michigan can learn how to set up the field and everything like that. We went to that event with our practice spot. Kind of like what everyone's saying is, it seems like this game is more of a reaction style game. In previous years, it was all about robots doing actions, like they're going to get a gear and score a gear and shoot fuel. This year, you're gonna react more to your opponents of what they are doing. If they score on the scale, you might score on the scale.
Right.
If they score on your switch, you might score on your switch. So I think it's going to have a little bit different gameplay this season than what we've seen in the past. The one thing that I noticed from being at the week 0 event is vision wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. A lot of teams don't realize that the switch and the scale have clear, but on the other side of the scale, there are some, blind spots where you can't see your robot.
That's true. That's certainly true. I mean, it's a lot better than, say, like last year when the big old opaque thing is in front of your face, but it's still not simple to look at.
Oh,
I
man.
would go ahead, Ty.
Speaking of not of big opaque things in front of your face, um, we're going to have these giant ramp bots that have essentially built walls, so that they can drive around and play the vault and block your view of anything that you can see. We ran into that at week 0 where they wanted to practice with the vault and we just couldn't see anything beyond the Iron Curtain, and we actually lost our robot behind another robot. And I think that's going to be like, I had no idea that was coming.
That's one of those things that you would know if you played in like 2007, and you remember like being able to having to look through your own robot sometimes with big ramps on it. But it is one of those things where you just kind of like, oh yeah, I got a robot, whatever, it's nothing, it's just a thing. But then this year, robots with big legitimate ramps are actually huge bricks of metal, basically. That's kind of one of the things that like the little forks can help with, I guess. But I'm still not convinced about that. Actually, let's talk about that because I'm really curious. What are your guys' thoughts on climbing up ramps and climbing up forks that we've seen so far? I got an opinion, but I want to hear you guys first because I want to see if it's the same or different.
Please don't drop my robot. We there was we went up it was 60, I can't remember the team numbers, but we went up a few ramps at week 0, mostly so that they could get practice with their ramps, because that's kind of what week 0 is you're just trying to get a feel for how the game plays and what your robot can do, but you also have to give a chance for other robots to do. So we went up the ramps at week 0, but I don't know if I'd be comfortable going up another ramp um, in this upcoming weeks. Like if the matches actually matter, I don't, I feel much more comfortable with my robot climbing all by itself.
JB, what are your thoughts on that, especially because I know you guys you play with a whole bunch of different people. There were some pretty good ramps at week 0 in Bedford. What are you guys' thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there were some ramps. I'm really worried by these people that are asking you to drive on from the sides. I think it's almost like a not worth the risk there, especially depending on what the end of the game looks like. Someone may be sitting in that null territory, and it's just not worth approaching it from that angle. The front ones aren't too bad. Like I think you'll see some like 125 do really well. But I'm kind of in the same camp. I'm a little worried about it. I know we have our own ramp system that we're working on for a partner climb, but I'm definitely also in the same camp as Ty and very worried.
And that's kind of I gotta agree. And I'm not just worried. I'm like absolutely terrified. Like to the point where I would say that a lot of the ramps and forks that we've seen so far, I would never ever consider bringing my robot up those. It's just like way too way too janky. Honestly, is it's the only word I can use to say that. So I mean, 125s looks wicked cool. I will say that, but it does have this awkward situation where like the only time we saw somebody climb it was when and they tipped over. They basically tipped over their own alliance partner. Um, I'm going to guess they're going to do a lot of stuff. We know they're going to make it better. They're going to make it good, so it'll be effective by the time they get to their later events. But it's just really weird.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, we're going to a week 1 event. Apex is down in Clackamas, and um, personally, I'm really nervous to go up on anybody else's thing until some other team has taken the plunge first and demonstrated structural capability. I think to quote Doctor Who, do the smart thing and let somebody else try first. Um, so and sometimes that may not be possible, and we'll make a judgment, if it looks, if we look at it and looks like it's well built and easy to get up on, then we might give it a try. But I think for the most part, we're gonna prefer either climbing ourselves or doing something else, unless there's a really really good chance that we're gonna get that ranking point out of it, because it's ramps are hard. Ramps are really hard. We learned that in 2007,
oh
and this year's
yeah,
got so many more wrinkles to it in terms of the approach and the protection and the scale being in the way for tall robots and other robots trying to climb and all that stuff that um, I'm really nervous to see how it pans out. So um, I think it'll get a lot better by the end of the season, and a lot of teams will either end up ditching the ramps because they don't work well, or kind of bubbling to the top because they're one of the few that really are easy to climb and have put a lot of thought into it and made them robust. But
Yeah,
I, we,
Evan and Francis, thanks a bunch for ruining most of this with the 2007 190 robot. You built the side ramps, and now everybody sees the world champion, and they go with the side ramps, and it's all your fault.
actually, our buddy Steve Caneb, he made a video about the ramp stuff. Actually, at the behest of Glenn from 359. Glenn was like, "Oh, can you like make a video about your ramp so we can all see it?" Um, and he did. He showed a bunch of stuff. I just think people didn't get the right takeaway that like, hey, this thing is really hard to make and not easy. But thank you, Glenn, for sending us those chocolates. Though that was great. So
So,
well, I
so
posted
one
a whole album of pictures. I didn't get any chocolates.
you didn't talk to the right guy. What were we going to say,
Apparently
Clinton?
not.
I was just gonna say about the ramps and everything is I'll say our team hasn't done anything to be support other robots or ramps, so we're looking forward to being in some matches with some ramps. I think we'll give it a shot, but we're definitely gonna ask them to go over to the practice field and give it a try, test going up the ramps to see what it's like. The hope is some teams have maybe simulated ramps in their pits that you can kind of go over their pits and kind of just do a push test to get the robot up on the ramp to see. But we kind of this season hoped and wish other people have ramps, so we don't have to fight them for it, and we can go up it. Um, I think at our week 0 event, we were going to try to go up our opponents' ramps because we heard them fall down and no one was doing it. But we ran out of time and we didn't get to go up their ramp. So it's hard to see going up your own ramp, let alone going up your opponent's ramp on the other side of the scale. So
Yes.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I think maybe to put a little bit of a different spin on it. The teams that have built something like a practice ramp, etc., or whatever, those are not the teams that I'm
yeah,
necessarily worried about, right? It's the teams that maybe haven't put as much thought into it, copied a previous design, um, and really didn't spend a lot of time thinking about how to interact with other teams going up their ramps. They just built something, they're expecting to drop them and just have teams magically be able to climb. And it's been a decade since we've seen something like this. And I think a lot of people watched the top level matches and saw teams climbing up real easy and didn't spend as much time watching qualifications and understanding just how hard it is for two robots to drive up. That year, you are right in front of your driver's station, not halfway across
Yeah.
the field, right?
Actually, that reminds me, Evan, when we were 1 seed on Newton, we spent all of Saturday having people come to our pits and drive up our ramps to test,
Yep.
right? And to see if
So,
it
so
worked.
uh, a little tip for all of you that are planning to drive up ramps, or all of you that have ramps and are planning to have teams drive up them, whether they're actuated lifts or static ones. First off, have some of your drive team, whether it's your coach, whether it's your human player, whether it's your driver because your robot's not driving anymore, go coach the teams going up the ramps and make sure that they know what they need to do and where they need to be and how far to go. And the second thing is always go heavy side of the robot first, if at all possible, assuming that your robot can climb that direction, especially for the teams that have active lifters. Um, we had some funny nuances with the 190 robot in 2007, where if the heavy side of our partner was outboard, it would end up cantilevering and pivoting around the piston and lifting our robot instead of their robot. Some robots have that problem, some robots don't. It's just way easier on everybody. Go heavy side first.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
I think also the teams that are going to probably have a little bit more success are the teams that probably on our team we call them Hulk bots, teams that lift themselves and one additional robot. I think they're going to see more success than the standard ramp bots because you only need to have one of your two robots drive on to that instead of having both robots achieve it. You got to make sure the robot lasts through the entire match. It doesn't flip over, the battery doesn't die, they don't get stuck at the other end of the field. So I think those teams that built a Hulk style robot that lifts themselves and one other robot are going to see a little bit more success than what you would see with a typical ramp.
Yeah, and then speaking of Hulk, you could just be really, really like 148 about it and just you're coming with us whether you like it or not.
So, so the my favorite part about the 148 situation is they solved one of the biggest issues our team had with it. Is our team had the big issue of, say a robot dies at the beginning of the match, they don't move after autumn, they didn't plug in their battery, they didn't do whatever it may be, they don't move, you can't get them up your ramp, and they have a way and a method to be able to take that robot to the platform and still achieve that one ranking point if they need to. So I think it's awesome that they came up with this, very unique and elegant solution to the problem.
I'm eager to see it
I
in
expect to
action.
see that design attempt to be imitated. I don't know
Yes.
how successful it will be, but it does look like it's a relatively small enough system that teams that have other deployment mechanisms already designed in to lift up other robots are going to be taking a serious look at how they can mimic the 148 system on their robot later in the season.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna change topics. We talked a lot about ramps, and we can talk more about them, I think, later on too. But we're gonna do our first question of the day. This question is coming into us from our buddy Austin. In a second, here we go. Should we come? All right, cool. So Austin Shallot asks, how important are the power ups? Do you guys think they are useful? JB, you're the only guy here who's pushed a real button before. What are your thoughts on power ups?
I mean, I haven't pushed a robot. Like we played
Oh,
them, but
I guess
um,
that's true.
it the action of playing them was more based on there not being other scoring actions on the field and the ROI of putting cubes into the vault. So it wasn't like a strategic like, oh, we definitely want to like we played boost when we had both things, but it wasn't like a predetermined thing. It was kind of like, let's see where the state of the match is, and if it makes sense, we'll do it.
Yeah, and speaking of state of the match, one thing I noticed a lot of teams doing at week 0 that I didn't really think of myself was they're they were stacking the cubes off to the side of the vault, and they would basically get 3, and they'd hold them off to the side, and as soon as they had the opportunity to use a max power up, they'd just shove all 3 into the power up they wanted to use and smack that button and then hope it went through in time. So I thought that was really really interesting to see. Basically, like, you're not just trying to get those 5 points as soon as you possibly can. You just wait and get the maximum.
You got to make
Yeah.
sure you play this very strategically. Go ahead, JB. You're going to say something?
Yeah, we were doing that. We had the game plan of like putting them outside, don't put them in because once they're in, they're locked in. You can't change it up. And so we were just stacking them outside. And I was actually kind of shocked to see how many people were just instantly committing to something. And I mean, it makes total sense to instantly commit to the levitate, but like once you get past those 3, or if you're not going to get those 3, it doesn't make sense to commit to the levitate, right? So you can burn cubes if you don't get the full 3. So it was just kind of we were stacking them out there and then waiting for an opportune moment. But we definitely messed up on a few times because it took a little longer to process what was like the processing of the cubes going into the vault than we had expected. And so our human player was initially being very instant on like putting 3 cubes in and then like going and not really processing the lights on the vault in front of them to say like there were a few times where they boosted for 2 instead of 3 when there were 3 in there. They just didn't wait long enough for the system to register.
Well, that's kind of
The
unfortunate.
Yeah, the levitate column is actually more powerful than I was expecting too. For example, one match for 319, we had a cube in our hands or in our robot, and we were heading to the vault to put the final cube into the exchange so that we could have 3 and get the levitate. But our driver decided to make a last minute decision and try and go for that last second get on the ramp so you can get the 30 points for the climb. When really, if you think about it, that last cube is worth 35 points, where
Yep.
getting on the climb is only worth 30 points.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead, Clint.
I was just gonna say, I think the levitate will be by far the number one power up used all season. I think, you will see the almost every match. It won't happen in every match, but I think most matches during qualifications, you're gonna see the levitate. It's a free 30 points. It's the first tiebreaker after ranking points, so a lot of people are gonna use that. But I think the other ones are gonna be used more, um, kind of like we said in terms of reaction. Um, Honestly, my personal opinion, I think you use the other power ups when you're winning more. If you own the scale, you own the switch. Why not throw some power cubes, into the exchange and get even a higher advantage and kind of, boost yourself further. But definitely the levitate one will not be overlooked at all during qualifications.
I think you nailed it on the head there. Like uh, playing Magic the Gathering or maybe other card games, you may know there's like the idea of like stop smiling, JB. I'm a nerd. I'm proud.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you.
There's winning, and then there's winning. The cards that make you win, and there's cards that make you win more,
Yep.
right? And you want to make sure you win first, and then you can win more afterward if you have the chance. And you're 100% right. And it's to the point where I kind of think that I'm fairly confident that until we get to highly competitive matches, which may be eliminations, finals of week 1, or like district championships or stuff like that, most of the time the boost and the force power up are gravy. They're kind of
Yep.
like extra points that are going to happen once in a while that maybe they'll matter for you, maybe they really won't. Because my big takeaway from week 0 is that, and I know that a lot of robots are still not working, obviously, right? But um, there are a lot of teams that are not going to score on the scale, not going to be able to score frequently on the scale. So if you can get the scale early and just protect it, you can run away with the match lickety split.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times when you'll see the power ups used more is the specialty robots. They're actually kind of some of my favorite robots out there is people like the Rembrandts and Beaverworks who almost like said like we're going to be a vault bot and we're going to be the best one out there to do it. And so those teams are going to take a bigger advantage of running cubes into the vault and getting that additional bonus because they're going to control their switch, make sure it's still owned, and then any chance they get some downtime, they're going to put a cube in the vault. So you'll see matches where it gets used, but it's because that team took the strategic decision to maybe build a robot based around the vault. And I think those people might actually rank pretty high and be a good ally to an alliance.
Yeah, I think these vault and switch bots are gonna be more valuable than you expect. Um, there's diminishing returns in having three scale bots that are all trying to go for that scale. There, you can probably like one really really good scale bot can probably outpace two, maybe two fairly good scale bots. But what I think that these switch and scale or what these switch and vault bots do is they free up the other two bots to focus on essentially getting that only contendable um, scoring location on the field in where like either you have the scale and you get points or you don't and they get points. And basically if you can have a robot that can just dominate your scale or their scale or the exchange, then it just frees up so much more room for you to go do what you need to do on the rest of the match.
Can I ask a serious question? Because I am a big proponent of the scale, and I am not a big proponent of the vault and the switch in general. Is there a robot that can do the scale that exists that cannot also do the switch? Eh,
So I don't know if it's well, JB
Maybe what?
Sorry.
Cat.
got
I
him.
don't know.
Yeah.
So he didn't. JB did not like that question apparently. So um,
Can't handle the truth.
no, I don't think it's as necessarily saying that scale bots can't switch. It's more of that focus. Like there are robots out there designed to do the switches in the vaults better than a scale bot. And teams that recognize that and have that ownership. I mean, the thing I've liked all season about it is it's a measurable thing for you. You have 10 cubes in front of you. It's sitting in one zone. You have the exchange, it's behind you. 2 minutes, 15 seconds, go. How long does it take you to get rid of those 10 cubes and put it into the exchange? And then you can start evaluating, hey, we did it in, 2 minutes. What can we do to make it faster? We did it in a minute 30. What can we do to do it faster? And teams that own that and really say that's what we're going to do, I think are going to be some better robots than some of the scale bots who try to do everything. People who built scale robots that also plan to lift and have two ramps on them, and they try to do everything, and they're not going to be as good of an alliance partner.
Well, I will definitely
Yeah, I
agree
think
with you.
Clinton really
I'll
hit the
definitely
nail
agree
on
with
the
you.
head there.
Can I say something? Just because I
Yeah,
I kind of
go for it.
I partly agree with you. I agree that a robot that tries to do everything will not do it well. Right? That's certainly true. And I think that if you try to build a robot that does a scale and have two ramps, and you're not a team with a lot of resources, you're gonna not succeed, right? But I think at the same time that like if you can take control of the scale and hold control of the scale and focus on that the entire match, I think it's incredibly challenging for your opponent to answer you on your own switch because of the way the protection zones work and crossing the other side of the field, right? I think that if you can hold the scale and maybe once in a while we'll go into that a little bit later, once in a while go and attack their switch, I think that you can ignore the vault and just kind of make sure you have the scale your own switch for at least a little bit, and then you could probably win a lot of matches. That's my thought, but I
So
don't know.
I definitely agree with that. But I think the difference and the nuance there is that this whole game is about speed, right? And that the teams that have designed specifically for Vault and Switch that are small, that are fast, that have a single focus and have practiced that over and over and over again, they're simplifying the game, right? They're going to go out and they're going to attack this one thing and they're going to do it really, really well. And compared to most of the scale bots that we've seen revealed so far, the only thing that's really differentiating most of those is how quickly and how practiced they are at doing it. And so I think what you're going to see by and large is that a lot of teams have designed to have the capability of doing the scale, but aren't going to be good enough at it, at least at the beginning, to effectively to justify that decision And if that same team had maybe chosen to build a specific vault switch bot and made it simple and got it done early and come out with a game plan that's not changing, that they're going out and doing every match, that those teams, especially early on, the ones that are designed for that vault and switch, are going to see a lot of success, just because of the consistency and the throughput compared to a team that isn't necessarily used to it. And I think one of the other nuances that goes into that is, practicing the scale is extremely difficult if you do not have access to a full field. Practicing switch and vault is a much easier thing to set up a small practice area and just do it over and over and over again. And I
Yeah.
think you're going to see a very big difference in teams that have practiced on a full field with these sight lines, um, and with the depth perception and all of that, and lining up and understanding how the scale actually tips back and forth as you put cubes on and what to be aware of, compared to the teams that haven't.
Yeah, I think you have a good point there, Evan. I mean, 319 had a prototype collector on a practice or on an old chassis from last year, um, running exchange cycles by the end of week one, and the ability to get that practice in and to really become an efficient and a master at like the simple, um, and like become like a master at that simple task is really powerful. For one example, like last year, the Archimedes division at St. Louis, they won their division because they were able to get 4 rotors super, 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 super fast and then play defense for the rest of the match and just wreak havoc on the rest. So if you can come in and you can fill that vault in, I don't know, maybe later in the weeks we've got like 30 to 45 seconds. Then you've got a robot that all they have to do is play on the switches and then just mess with the other teams. And I really think that that can throw a wrench in the other alliance's plans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think.
and
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, the comment I was going to say was I think those teams have to rank higher themselves. My fear for those teams is that they're going to be stuck in the valley, right? Like I love
Hmm.
them. I think they're great robots. I think teams that decided to do this were good decisions for a lot of teams. But my fear is that they're going to be in the valley of 4, 5, and 6. Where people don't want them as the first pick. However, everyone would love to have them as their third member of the alliance. So they need to choose their own destiny, and kind of like Ty is saying, is they need to come out week one putting cubes in that vault and winning matches unexpectedly because they put so many cubes in that vault and they didn't realize what hit them, and win a lot of matches and rank high themselves so they can pick the best scale robot at the event.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to Francis's original point, it's not that the strategy that he suggested is bad. It's, in fact, it's a really, really good strategy. But the bar to actually execute that strategy at a level that's high enough to compete with a well-practiced vault and switch bot, is significantly higher. And then combine that with the fact that there's 2 switches and 1 vault on the field. So if you have an alliance of 3 vault and switch bots, they're probably going to outperform an alliance of 3 dedicated scale robots, even though those scale robots can do the vault and the switch, because you're not going to get 3 robots scoring on the scale, and you're gonna you can afford to give up the scale if you can absolutely dominate the other 3 scoring elements of the game.
I don't know. I respect what you're all saying. I can't. I don't know. I can't see a scenario where if I own the scale for, let's say, if I can own the scale for 120 seconds in teleop, 130 seconds, if I can hold it for 100 seconds, I don't see a scenario where robots that just play on the switch and the vol beat me.
No, I
Right?
don't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that just getting the 3 best scale robots on your alliance will not make the best possible alliance. I'm saying that the Switch and Vault robots are going to be more powerful because they enable the scale robots to be more focused on that all important scale.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to agree to disagree here, I guess.
Well,
So
well,
wait,
we're
so
gonna
so
we're
I
gonna
have a
find
I have a
out pretty
question for you,
shortly
Ty.
with real matches, and we'll
JB, what were you
check
saying?
in back next
So,
week.
so I have a question for you, Ty. Like, let's say you're at an event and you're the best scale bot there, right? And you see number one. Now you're in a scenario where there is this absolutely phenomenal switch vault specialist, say they're sitting 4, 5, 6, but then the number 2 person is the other best scale robot there. What do you go with?
I would have you at that point you have to pick the scale robot because say like the number 1 scale robot isn't going to be so much better than the number 2 and number 3 scale robot that he can outpace, you know, 2 and 3 working together to hold that scale. But I think you can get, what I'm saying is I think you can get lucky, and if you have, you know, 2 mediocre at best scale robots that can maybe put up a, you know, maybe 3 or 4 cubes on the scale at their time, they can be really, really I can't think of the word. They can be made a lot more powerful if they have a good switch robot at the end. So maybe the scenario becomes you're like a 4, 5, 6 ranked like epic switch and exchange robot, and then you pick the best scale robots that you can. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to look at, you know, number 2. I mean, it depends on the event. Is the number 2 scale robot, you know, slower at the scale than your team, right? Like, so say your team, I don't know what the numbers really are right now, but you know, say that you can score in the scale with 10, you know, 10 seconds a cycle. And however, the next best scale robot is 20 seconds a cycle. You're twice as fast as them. But the switch bot, it can load the switch up in 6-second cycles. I think there are situations where that could be a true statement at some lower level districts and stuff like that. If there's such a discrepancy behind that, and that scale bot is so quick and so fast at doing it, there might be situations. We personally on our team don't like to go in it saying, yeah, absolutely, you have to pick the best scale bot. I think rule of thumb is you pick the best scale robot, but you also don't want to ignore these scale bots and vault bots that might actually be able to outperform that that scale bot. You know, the vault bot can actually pace it out and actually get more points per second.
Okay. Well, I am eager to see how it plays out in real matches too. I hope I'm right, but I will accept if you're right instead.
Have everyone go out there and prove us wrong. How about that?
Oh, linkativity. All right. We're gonna
Disclaimer.
we're gonna move into the second part of our little presentation here. So JB, you guys won. You won. You definitely won. But you know, you won week 0 in Bedford. Um, I know not everybody's robots like fully capable, but you guys played some real matches on the real field. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna.
douse that one down.
I'm just saying, right? You know, like it's one of those things that's like, you know, on Team 190 we don't go toting around that we won the world championship 10 years ago, right? And it's like, oh, week 0, woo, great, awesome, right? You know, but why don't you, would you want to run us through what you guys did during your final match number 3 this past week?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna do this. So match 3 up here. Okay. Match has begun. You guys are on the Red Alliance, but you're with blue bumpers. Is that right, JB?
Yes, we did not have
Okay, cool.
both sets made.
Right.
So auto has started. We didn't have our scale auto yet, but we're kind of lucky in this scenario because we had kept getting the scale to our side, and we actually wanted the scale for the other side to try what we just did here, which was basically we wanted to try rushing through the null zone because we thought we could be faster than 78 and 58-13 and getting there, and then play a little defense on them to kind of slow them down while the outliers took the scale. And then after that, our game plan was to try and take their switch. So that way we could kind of force them to have to refocus what they were doing onto their switch.
See, so basically you were trying to distract them from the scale by taking the switch.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, we
And
see
so
here
like
that
right now we have their switch. Well, we don't have it, but they don't have it. And we have the scale, and so we're kind of just, this is kind of, I think we try to score one more here just to kind of get a little extra. And then we're going to run around here and we're going to start doing the vault, because right now we have their switch, we have our switch, and the scale is kind of teeter-tottering back and forth. And the other thing was we only put one robot on the scale. We didn't put 2 because we thought that one of us could keep it close to even or own it the whole time. If we thought we needed to put 2 there, we would have put 2 there, but we weren't too worried about it. So right here, we'll just start shuffling cubes back and forth. And so you can kind of see we're holding. We haven't put anything in the vault yet. We're just stockpiling stuff back there at this point, kind of waiting to see. We got the 3 for the levitate, so we commit to that.
You guys basically played full court press here. You basically went, took the scale, pressured them on their switch, and then came back only after you owned both of those, right?
Yep, exactly. And so the thing we were kind of the way we were approaching this was like the outliers' job was really to kind of own the scale, and then our job was everything else on the field. And so we were kind of just playing different things at different times, and that's kind of how that worked out.
And was that that was just like an unfortunate get on the platform at a last second, and then your robot ran into the scale? Is that what that was?
Yes, our driver has not had a lot of practice, so we did a lot of running into the scale throughout the event. So hopefully that's something we can fix for week 1.
How did that? How did it? How did the driver handle? Well, sorry, I'll start over. It looked like you guys were going for the scale as much as possible in your qualification matches and for most of your elimination matches. How did your driver handle the switch to the switch?
Yeah, so he did a really good job, and we kind of we're trying to get to this model, and I think a lot of people are doing this, is where our operator kind of coaches our driver, and then I spend the time trying to coach the other people that are on the station with us. And so he had been looking forward to it. He had been spending a lot of time like preparing for stuff, but we didn't really get that much practice time in, so it was kind of just going for it, and it worked pretty well. We definitely learned some vision issues. Like it's really hard to see the cubes on the opposite side against their scale, their switch, because of the blocks that are there for the height at the end. But it's something that you just kind of got to work through.
So, I guess I got a question. Since we kind of went over week 0 a lot and kind of been talking about it already, let's go into sort of like what week 1's going to look like here, right? A little bit. Oh, GB, this strategy you guys executed, it obviously worked, right? You won, but do you think that's going to push through to the next week? Like, are you guys planning at your first district to run a similar strategy a lot of the time, or is your plan? Do you think your plan's going to shift or modify?
I think it's somewhat similar. I mean, I think in quals it'll be different. I think we've been really practicing for the scale because I have a very big fear of other teams getting tech fouls like we were doing in there because I saw how easy it was to do. So we've been prepping for the scale a lot. But I think you'll see similar strategies where it's kind of make sure you own your scale, try to own your switch, and then kind of start playing with their stuff and really try to deny them points so that they have to start focusing on other things.
I think the really crucial thing that is going to catch a lot of teams off guard week 1 is not just going out with the match plan, but understanding how your decisions change and how you have to play when you're ahead versus when you're behind, because you're really playing almost two different games, right? When like JB's strategy here, they came out, they got ahead, and they were able to pivot from that and just perfectly execute their strategy. Whereas the other alliance, their strategy is almost entirely upended by what their opponents were doing because they didn't have control of those things. And so,
I,
knowing what the plan is and how you maneuver to try and get yourself an opening and get back into the match, I think is really going to separate a lot of teams week 1 who've spent time thinking about it versus those who maybe haven't.
yeah, the other thing is probably that other alliance that you were facing probably had the exact same strategy. It's probably what they wanted to do. However, coming out of Auton and maybe having some extra points or getting that really nice placement of that cube on the scale early changed the tide and made them have to react to your plays instead of you reacting to theirs. So, like a lot of people, I think strategies are going to be fairly similar in terms of let's own the scale. If we own the scale and maybe we have an extra cube, let's start putting in their switch so they have to make the decision. Do we have to take our switch back or do we keep fighting for the scale?
Yeah, when you get ahead in this game, you can start forcing your opponent's resources where you want them to be.
Yep.
Whether by attacking their switch and piling on cubes there, or continuing to pile on cubes on the scale or whatever. So I think that's going to be a really important factor for the whole season. But I think it's going to be painfully obvious week 1, the teams that understand that and the teams that don't.
You're actually bringing up another Magic the Gathering thing. This is basically this is basically the concept of tempo, right? Like having tempo, and thanks Steve for calling me a nerd across the room, but having tempo and keeping it,
Nerd.
right? Maybe you're not putting up the most cubes that you could if you were just going back and forth, but you're putting up all the cubes you need, so at the end of the match, it's in your favor, not the opponent's.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things to realize when from watching these week zero videos from the official week zero is I honestly think that week zero as it stood was probably one of like probably a very stacked district event in terms of the number of teams that were capable and competitive there. So I don't expect to see a lot of events week one that end up playing out the way that they did in the finals. You'll probably have, one or two alliances that can really dominate the scale, and they'll just kind of ride that scale through to the end. And I think what teams will really start to notice is this game is not like most of the games that we've seen in the past, in which it's just score as many points as you possibly can and maybe slow the other teams down. This game is maximize what percentage of the points available you can get. There's a cap. You can only gain points so fast, and I think that that's come week one. I think a lot of teams are going to get very surprised by that. It's not just like, oh, we put 15 cubes on the scale and we still lost. It's because, you owned the scale the whole time and they were getting points elsewhere.
Yeah, there's gonna be a something of a magic number or a goal that it's like, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna put 4 or 5 or 6 cubes on this objective, whether it's the scale or the switch, and then go do something else, and we kind of don't care at that point if either if it gets taken back or if our opponents start trying to take it back, because we'll have bought ourselves time with that by doing it faster.
Yeah, great.
Assuming you can do it faster.
I would say great scouting systems and scouters will be able to have those magic numbers.
Yep.
There will be potentially calculations that you can do to tell you how many cubes you need to put up, and after that, you could potentially stop fighting for the scale. And then the opponents are like, well, "Why did you stop fighting?" And then you basically can whisper in their ear because you won't get it back. It's too late. It's already over.
Hmm.
Well, that
Or
brings up a good question. That
It's
one of the
over. I
people in
have
chat.
the high ground.
Oh boy, now you're the nerd. It brings up a good question that we talked. Somebody brought up in chat. Electronica one underscore asks, what would be a good number of cubes scored per match by one robot? And Clinton, what do you think? I think I know your answer, but what do you think your answer to that question would be?
You think you know my answer? I was curious what my
Yeah,
answer would
I
be.
think you just said it
A good
basically, right?
Well, I think a good robot probably in the first early weeks, 4 to 6 cubes would be a good robot. I think. Are you talking about like scale, right? Was that the question? Was it in the scale or just scoring in general?
Oh, either or, right? I guess.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was muted. Sorry, people around me were talking. I guess that would be either or, right? You
I
know,
think in the scale, good robots will be 4 to 6. I really do think that's a reasonable thing for early on. I think it's going to increase as the season goes on. But the interesting thing about this game is you don't need to score 4 or 6 if you only need to score one to own it the whole match. It depends on your opponents, right? And smart teams will put only as much resources on that scale that they need to. Smart teams will only put 2 to 3 if they can own it 2 to 3 the entire match.
I was going to say my to be kind of fresh, but my answer is basically one more than your opponents do, right? And
Yep.
that could be one, and it could be 14. But I
Yep.
think that's the answer.
Yep. I One of the things that was that stands out to me about this game is that if you're enough faster at stuff than your opponents are, um, a single robot can absolutely can dominate the game. And that's something that we have not seen in first games for a while. Um, it shows up to varying degrees, but um, if you're just the cream of the crop at your event, and you're going whizzing around the field and put some scales in the put some cubes in the scale and go put some cubes in the switch and then come back and finish out the vault and go climb at the end, like you've got a really good shot at winning almost every single match you play. The question for me comes in of how do the extra ranking points factor in? Because I think one of the big things that's different this year than the past couple years where we've had these extra RP bonuses is this is the first year since 2012, the first time that we saw this, where it is actually impossible for any one robot to guarantee themselves a ranking point. And so I'm
Oh.
curious to see how that plays out.
I would counter and say that one robot could guarantee their team 2 ranking points if you just win, right?
Yes.
Okay, extra the bonuses.
Right. But it's really
That
hard to
gives
get
us-
these bonus ranking points though, right? Like I think that you could possibly score number 1 or rank number 1 most of the time at most events if you're not with like 2056 to 1114. You could probably rank 1 or 2 by just winning every match. I know it sounds just win every match, right? But like,
Yeah, especially in week one, if you go like you're gonna have very few triple climbs, because it's gonna take people a while to iron their kinks out, enough to drive, let alone drive onto another ramp that has also had its kinks ironed out. Or maybe there'll be a bunch of ramps that have kinks put into them because they failed when they climb.
Ooh,
Yeah, terrible pun.
it's
yeah, you're on a roll.
But I think like so I think the climb ranking point is basically right out and will be very, very rare for week one. But the auto ranking point I think is going to be very important. But it just I think it'll just show that the teams that are winning are also the teams that have the capabilities to go and help their alliance partners get the auto. So I think it's gonna help the cream rise.
I so our team, we looked at the ranking points this season, and we tried to compare this season to last season, and we looked at the autonomous ranking point very similar to the 40K PA ranking point, and the climbing ranking point similar to the 4 rotor. um, there is no way, I would say, one alliance, unless they're sniping gears from the floor, could get the 4 rotors by themselves. They needed to have their partners, and they needed to do it the entire match. If one of the robots broke down, maybe you didn't get it. Where with the 40 kPa last year, one robot could get a lot of points in autonomous and then make it up the rest of the round. If they know they're going in this match and they're losing, they can get that ranking point. And looking at the autonomous period, it's kind of a situation where you can come up with a good auton to get the scale and auton, and have a group of students that go around and ensure that all the people are having mobility, and learning code and doing in that. So the great thing about it too, it's the first thing you do in the match, right? The first thing you do in the match is drive forward. You already have that ranking point. Where the last one, everything has to go right. People got to get up the ramps, got to get there. They can't die. They can't be stuck. So I feel like you're going to see the mobility one a little bit more common. But some teams struggle with having autonomouses to be able to look at the logic and make the turns and place the cube where they want it. So
actually, you perfectly segued into this question that W Bissett 97, whoever that is, asked. asked, do you think people are going to cheesecake autonomous programs on their alliance partners to get ranking points? So JB, I know you guys, you're and Ty as well. You guys are, and also Evan too, right? All of you, tell me about this. You guys are up and coming teams with lots of folks on them, lots of experience. Are you guys planning any of this stuff? I know everybody, all you guys here are going to shoot for that number 1 spot. Are you guys like, is that your plan? Is to go and find all your partners and give them a short autonomous mode?
Yeah, 319 and 1619 actually paired up this season to develop like a public repository for autonomous modes that will get a robot to cross the line. And we've been working on adding, basically, if you have an autonomous mode that you want to add or autonomous code that you want to add, then you can go to the public repository and you can submit it for review, and then basically it just builds this code repository where you can copy and paste code in from one robot or from the internet into another robot and go through there. The thing that we're struggling with is we're strong with Java, but not very strong with like C++ or LabVIEW. So hopefully we can rely on other teams that are at our event to help us there. But yeah, we are definitely planning on going ahead on practice day and trying to get as many robots up and running as possible.
Tight plug. What about you guys, JB?
I think we're going to be the same boat. We're going to walk around, make sure all our alliance partners are good to go, and try and help them where we can.
Yeah, it's certainly a goal of ours. I don't know. I don't know if we're really gonna have the capacity to do it at our first event. Um, Apex is pretty small, and our team is very, very young. Um, in fact, most of our programming team is entirely middle school students. So they've done a bang up job this year, especially with help from another code thing that Bob developed, Bob Trajectory, getting our own autonomous modes going. But we really haven't had the capacity to, as Ty said, learn the other languages besides Java that we're using. So, and there's also a lot of code stuff left to do on our own robot to get us at capacity. So, it was certainly something that we identified at the beginning of the season that we wanted to be able to focus on. And I think the question for me is really just whether our team specifically is going to have the capacity to have students going around and helping out with that at our event. I'd like to, but I think it's unlikely for us, which
What
is
you guys,
unfortunate.
Clinton?
But
We will definitely have some engine ninjas going
Oh,
around the pits, if you will. I honestly, your ability to have mobility and autonomous is more important than your drivetrain pit scouting questions. We care more about our pit scouting this year. To us, the number one thing is going to be what programming language do you have, and do you have mobility to move across the line? Soon as we get there, we're going to be looking at our match schedule and trying to figure out our partners and try to go, ask them or try to see if they're going to be at the practice field or if they got out to the practice match and moved across that line. It's extremely important if you can come out ahead. Um, in the first couple of matches, ensure your partners are moving across that line. The nice thing about it, everyone else at the event is going to be trying to do this as well. So probably, in Michigan, we get about 12 matches at a district event. So my guess is by match 4 or 6, everyone should be having a moving auton by then, if everyone's doing the job of trying to get that mobility. And then it's up to the teams who need to ensure that their switch auton ability is dialed in and getting it. There's another portion of that you need to have. We've been seeing a lot of teams, I think, go out and show their scale capability of doing multi cube autons on the scale, but getting that switch in the first couple of matches is just as important as scoring on the scale.
all right. Well, we're coming toward the end of the show here. We've been on for about an hour now. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of rapid fire through a bunch of questions. I'm going to point these questions at each of you guys to answer. So if you've got questions, send them in right now. This will be one of your last chances to get them in before we have to move on. So this one's going first to JB. Question: how many times? Oh, this is from Cat I Yay, apparently is the name. How many times will JB say Jalid to his alliance partner's human player messing with the portal? I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I feel like that's got to be important, right?
Yeah, it will happen a lot. It's basically calm down. Um, and I was doing this already at week 0. It's kind of take a breather, think about what you're going to do. No rush here, because everyone was just so fast on trying to get those things in there. And it was just take a breather, think about what you're going to do. Let me double check what you're going to do and then do it.
All right, I got a real question. Another question coming up for you though, JB. This one comes from Sidargwal _. He asks, how big of a deal will it be to queue power ups one against the other? How big of a deal will that be for strategy? Will it be a big deal at all or nothing?
That's a really good question, and I don't honestly. It didn't really seem like it was happening that critically at week 0, but I think part of that may be the visibility of the audience screen at that particular event. I think later in the season it will definitely be important, but I don't think it's going to be important at all in week 1.
Yeah, whoever the AV guy for that event was
Yeah, I don't know.
incredibly
That
handsome,
guy's
but
not very
yeah,
good though.
some doofus though. No. Uh, I got another question. I'm going to send this one over to Evan though. This one comes in from Asatoth. Thank you for coming in again. Do you think powerhouse teams will prefer the center position in autonomous to guarantee the switch, or a wing position to have better odds of a scale?
um, I think the really true powerhouse teams are going to actually have switch autos for both sides of the switch from the side position. Whether or not they'll have them this week, I don't know. But my expectation is that the really top teams, and even maybe some of the slightly up and coming teams there are gonna have the ability to start from the side and go to either switch position, probably around the back, um, just to be able to be compatible with a team that wants to start in the middle, either because they have an exchange autonomous where they go put cubes in the exchange, or because they have their own switch and both of them want to try and double guarantee that they hit it. Um, Early on, I think that the preference is going to be that the teams with the um, higher with the bigger reputation potentially, or the teams that have demonstrated that they have consistent switch autos are going to be the ones that are starting in the middle. I think
Okay.
it's going to be pretty rare to get uh, an alliance especially in qualifications, where one team wants to start in the middle and do the switch, and the other team, wants to start in the middle and do something else.
Okay. Seems reasonable. We're gonna send this next question over to Clinton here. Electronica1_ asks, how often will teams get a power up but forget to use it before the match ends?
You said when the match ends.
Like how often do you think they're gonna get a power up, put the cubes in the vault, and forget to push the button? Is it gonna happen all the time, once in a while, or and how can you stop it as a player?
I, Part of me wants to rephrase the question. How many times are people going to put power cubes through the exchange and never put it in the vault?
Oh,
Right? Like,
that's good.
I think that's a bigger problem. If you're putting it in the last, like, 5 seconds or something like that, just to get those points to count, I think you're going to hit the button right away. I think the way teams are going to probably do it more is they're going to prep them and use them when they need to. So by doing that, I think there might be teams that have 3 cubes sitting there that they never put in the vault because they didn't think about it, because they were supposed to wait until they got the confirmation from their drive coach to do a boost or to do whatever. I think once you put it in there, you'll probably use it. It depends on your method. I think a lot of people are going to keep them out until they need them.
See, I was about to recommend leaving them out and just, as soon as you put them in, wait till the lights show up and push the button. But now I'm not sure that's such a great method either.
All right,
You-
one more question
so
over for. We're gonna move on to one more question here for Ty. This one's from W97 again. He asks, how common will field faults be compared to previous years? So you were at week 0. How frequently do you think it's going to be? Better, worse than like say 15, 16, 14?
Um, I think I think basically what's happening is first is getting better at designing the field. Um, and so you'll probably see less like mechanical failures with this field than you did see with like springs or something last year. But one thing we did notice at week 0 was that the lights on the scale were kind of dying every other match or so. And so I think we might see some field faults from that if they haven't figured it out. They've gone through and they've added some grounding because they think it was ESD that caused it. But we think that basically, I think we might see a couple of field faults from that, but I think field faults will actually be pretty rare this year. It looks like a very robust field.
But would that actually count as a field fault? Because
The
I mean,
lights
I
don't
guess
go
I
out.
guess the bigger question is, are those lights considered enough uh, important enough about communicating game information that them going out would be constitute a field fault, or are
That's
they
a
just going
great
to say, well, you
question.
can see if it's tipped?
Yeah, I think the thing you have
Really,
to
a
do
great
is you just
question.
have to
Go
be
ahead.
able to convince the head ref that the lights going out caused you to lose the match.
Yeah.
which will be difficult.
It's never easy.
Yeah.
I
Ask at
mean,
your driver's meeting and find out.
I think first people don't want to replay matches. They don't want to call a field fault. However, looking at some of the fields I was, pieces tonight, there are some spots where cubes can get that can prevent the switch from changing directions. I think that's going to be the field fault that has to reset it. And my hope is that the refs foghorn it sooner than later, and they don't have teams rushing and going to climb and falling down and hurting their robots because a cube got stuck under a switch. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen more than what people think it's going to happen.
Better a cube than a Roomba.
Fair enough. What we're gonna one last question here. I'm going to send it for JB. Question comes from Sadargwal_. He asks, how do you think rankings will play out? Scale bots on top, switch bots on top. What's it going to be?
I think it will be scale bots on top, unless, and I think on top of that will be the scale bots that take someone with them for a climb, because I don't think it's going to be super relevant this week. I think we'll see a few teams doing it consistently, but I think come later weeks you'll see a lot of scale bots that take one person with them.
So can I interject a question? Scale bots or ramp bots? Who takes number one?
I think it will be scale bots who take someone.
Yeah.
At least in week 1 for sure.
Yeah. You guys know my opinion on the scale. Scale is king. Scale is bay. So I would definitely.
Scale is bay.
Yes, I would
Scale is
definitely.
life.
I would definitely agree with JB in that regard, right? But. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching GameSense this week. It was a pleasure, JB. Big thanks to you for joining us on the show, and
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Hope your first week event goes well. We'll be watching on the webcasts all weekend, I'm sure. Also, big thanks to the rest of the RSN crew in the background, especially Ruth, who's been in the chat talking with folks and pulling questions for us. Big thanks to Ruth and the rest of RSN as well. Last big thanks is to Symbotic, again, great sponsor of RSN. They've been doing this for 4 years with us, and they let us do all the awesome things we do. So check them out at symbotic.com. They build automated warehouses. They're huge. They're cool. If you're a robot geek like us, you're going to love them. And last thing I'll say, if you like what we do and you have Amazon Prime and you have that Twitch Prime sub available, or if you want to support us monetarily, feel free to hit that subscribe button up top. It helps us out and helps us to keep our costs down for this and for other live events that we go to. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. Good luck to week 1 events. Make sure to watch all those cool webcasts that are going to happen this weekend because it'll be a lot of fun. And we'll see you all later. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.